The thing about dialogue, as long as you are sincerely dialoguing, you will get to a point of either agreement or disagreement. You will either rise with something or you will rise without something. But at some point you will rise. And I'm saying, even from yesterday's interaction, I was, when I replayed it in my head, and I think I actually said it in my presentation, that we must reach a point where we will start doing what we are agreeing to. We cannot continue to be talking and talking and talking, because we're saying the same thing year in, year out, organization after organization, government after government. Our demands in the Niger Delta has not changed for years. Since 1998, we've been calling for resource control, resource ownership, and management. Now, we're not going to go back. We will only go forward. So if we are now at the point where we're saying, let us restructure Nigeria. If we say, let's restructure Nigeria, it doesn't mean, if you restructure Nigeria, are you then saying you're leaving Nigeria? Then why restructure? So we're calling for restructuring because we want to stay in Nigeria. But what we're saying is that let's change the way the game is played. Yeah. That is all we're saying. We're saying you've controlled the resources from the Niger Delta, or any other place for that matter, if the resources are controlled by the government there. We're saying you've done it for too long. Let the owners control it and pay tax to federal government. Now, if a federal government says no, any federal government says no, I'm not going to do that, then you are saying that we should take the alternative. And the alternative is to discuss how we would disengage. But it needs to be understood that today there are people who are determined in Niger Delta, and I am one of those people. I am a non-violent agitator. I do not believe in violence. I do not want to use violence as a platform of argument for my very justified argument for justice and equity for my people. I do not want to use violence. But I must also point out that what we are arguing against and what we want is the process that people are using violence against us, taking our resources from us. Taking our resources from us and controlling it is violence, because we don't want you to do it. So basically, let's restructure. The failure to restructure will only take us to the next step, which is let's discuss how to disengage.
Last 2 weeks in our telephone conversation, you expressed great dissatisfaction on the manner the federal government clamped down on Mr. Nnamdi Kanu of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. Why, can you remind us some of those arguments again for the benefit of our listeners?
Nnamdi Kanu is leading a group, the indigenous people of Biafra group, which is a group that has come up from the Igbo nation and is pursuing the 50-year-old call for a separate nation for Biafra. Now, when Ojukwu declared the Republic of Biafra, he declared it from the position of the old defunct Eastern region. Now, that Eastern region covered not only Igbo people, it's not only the indigenous Igbo people that were in the Eastern region. Ijos were there, Ogoni people were there, Efik, Ibibio,
sure.
All what is today the South-South, Niger Delta, and the Southeast, and part of the old Midwest was part of the Biafra that Ojukwu declared in 1968. Now, today, that map of the Eastern region is only a historical fact. Nigeria is no longer working or governing along those that old Eastern region man. Now, therefore, the call by IPOB for a Biafra nation is a call by the indigenous, a group of the indigenous people of Biafra, which really consists of Igbo people. Now, that stand for me as a rights agitator, that stand is a right for them to have. They have a right to demand for that. They have chosen to do it non-violently. That is also, for me, I also respect and agree with that and support that as a person. I support it not because I am or want to be in a nation that is going to be Biafra, because there is no nation called Biafra. Now, there is no nation, there was a nation declared as Biafra, it failed. It didn't exist after 3 years. Now, there is no nation that is called Biafra. If it happens, it will be in the future. Now, if anybody is aspiring to that, and that's what they've chosen to do, then it's their right to choose to do that. It's not me to say that they shouldn't have a right to do that. They have a right to do that. Now, the method is non-violent. Every other argument against it that is being raised is raised by either government disagreeing with their desire, or individuals or other groups disagreeing with their desires. It doesn't mean they don't have a right. Not even 100% Igbos do not even support the call for a separate nation called Biafra.
Sure.
So, but that does not mean that it takes away the right of the Igbo people that are calling for a nation called Biafra. Now, Nnamdi Kanu was arrested and charged with treasonable offense. Now, a man is guilty, a man is innocent until he is proven guilty. Now, if he is charged with treason, a competent court of law has to find him guilty and give him a sentence. We're still in the process of the court of law. Now, he got bail. The terms and conditions of his bail, as a human rights activist, when I look at the terms and conditions of the bail, I ask myself, I tell myself that his basic rights as a human being, with those conditions of bail, is being abused. Now, that is his argument to raise. That it is also my own argument to agree with that or not agree with that. Now, the condition of bail is up to the court that set those conditions to decide whether anybody has broken their terms of bail or not the army. The army, in my opinion, would come into a situation when the security of that nation is threatened by a group or an individual. Now, an individual or a group of people carrying a flag with half of a sun on it and with different colors on it, shouting, "We want Biafra," does not constitute a physical threat to Nigeria. It may constitute a threat to the change of mind of the people who are listening to it and may key into it. But you don't jail a man because of what is in his head. You don't jail a man because of what you think he is thinking. You jail a man because of what he has done.
Sure.
And what Nnamdi Kanu has done is say Nigeria is a zoo. The president's wife referred to Nigeria as a zoo when she said the jackals and the hyenas and the lions and whatever. So unless if she's saying that these lions are going to come out from the forest and come to the villa, I think she's referring to a certain group of human beings that are breeding and walking on two legs that she has identified as hyenas and lions. So the president's wife has accepted that Nigeria is a zoo. Senators have referred to it, Shehu has also referred to it. And even the president has been called the Lion King. Nnamdi Kanu didn't call him the Lion King. The president's wife referred to him as the Lion King. And so did Senator Shehu Sani. Now, I do not see any difference between what Nnamdi Kanu has. Even the president himself has referred to the fact that there are baboons and there are dogs in Nigeria when he said their blood will flow, unless if he's saying physically that dogs and baboons will fight themselves if Jonathan won an election in 2015. If he's referring to human beings, then I don't see that that is a crime that is punishable either by jail sentence or whatever. So when you look at what Nnamdi Kanu is being accused of, the law of the land gives the right to find him guilty or not guilty only through a court process. The Nigerian army is not part of the court process. And therefore, unless they were sure that Nnamdi Kanu had mounted a missile or a ground-to-air anti-aircraft or whatever, unless they found guns in Nnamdi Kanu or they had enough evidence to show that he had guns in his home, they had no business invading his home. Whether the pythons were singing or dancing or cooking or whatever the pythons were supposed to be doing in his community, unless that they were sent there to go and bite Nnamdi Kanu. If that was not the case, I don't see the business of the Nigerian army in the process of going into Nnamdi Kanu's premises.
We have heard a lot from you this morning. Maybe it's not the first time we are hearing this from you, but at least whenever we listen to you, it refreshes our memory and it reminds us of the need that to put Nigeria back on the right track. Thank you for these comments once again. But then finally, before we go, on your last take on the state of Nigeria and what needs to be done now.
Well, my organization that I convened, the Niger Delta Self-Determination Movement, in the last meeting we held about 6 weeks, almost 8 weeks ago, where we took a decision, we are suggesting that a timeline is attached to the call for restructuring. And the timeline for us has started now. And we are expecting that by the 31st of December, that's the timeline we are working within, so that will justify the statements and the decisions that we make in terms of our argument. We are arguing and proposing that there should be a timeline, and the timeline for 2017 is that by the 31st of December, we should be able to have extracted from the federal government of Nigeria a commitment that it will discuss the issue of restructuring within a space of time next year, 2018. So that this will engage and enable the people with the argument for restructuring to be able to find themselves on a platform that is going to be provided for, and we will support supervised by outside body, not contributing, but supervising. Maybe a body like the United Nations, supervising, maybe the United States of America observing, and maybe the United Kingdom observing, because the United Kingdom is also a player where we find ourselves today. They are primarily the people that generated the activities that brought us to where we are today. And they must know, even though Lord Lugard is dead, it was a political decision, a government decision that was made at that time by the British government, and the British government still exists, and they must somehow hold themselves responsible and contributory to where we are today. We're not saying that that means that they must take 100% account, but what they need to do is to realize that, first of all, the amalgamation has not worked in the favor of the people that they amalgamated. They amalgamated us, left us halfway after the amalgamation, and today look at where we are, abusing the amalgamation and trying to undo the amalgamation. The amalgamation has to be undone in the psyche of the people. Even if the physical amalgamation remains, the psyche of the amalgamation must be removed. We're not slaves or of the British government or of the people that the British felt that they should hand over political powers to, which is basically the northern part of Nigeria, by a certain cadre and caliber of people that they felt they could work with, as opposed to being able to work with the southerners that they consider too advanced in their political thinking and the way that we practice democracy, and we're more democratic and republican in the south in our way of thinking. Now, having said that, if the government commits itself to sitting down with the different parts of Nigeria, the Yorubas are saying restructure, the Igbos are saying restructure, the Niger Delta people, that is made up of Ijos, Ogonis, Ibibios, Efik, Isoko, Urobo, all these people are saying restructure Nigeria. The Middle Belt are saying restructure Nigeria. It's only a small part of the North that is saying they don't understand what restructuring means. Well, we should be able to, within 4 weeks, agree that we all are on the same page of what restructuring means. If we agree, then we now agree on the things that we need to restructure within a space of time. If we do that, we will know whether we will restructure or we will not restructure. If we're not going to restructure, or if we're going to restructure, it must be within a space of time. So the issue of restructuring, from the timeline that the Niger Delta Self-Determination Movement is proposing, the issue of restructuring should be resolved to the point that before the campaign for the 2019 election will start, before the approved dates for campaign will start, we would have agreed that we will restructure. That way, the issue of restructuring will be key to the campaign. The issue of restructuring will determine the votes, the number of votes for the campaign. So anybody who emerges as a president of Nigeria will have to, the first thing that will be on the table will be the process of actually restructuring. Because it is the restructured Nigeria that president is going to come and govern. And his government will be acting on a restructured Nigeria. That way we will be moving forward, and we would have created a new Nigeria that is comfortable for all of us, that where each state is responsible for himself or herself, where each region is responsible for himself or herself, and Nigeria can move forward. But if we refuse to accept restructuring for lack of understanding, and if we refuse to understand...
I was about to ask that.
Yes, and if we refuse to understand, then there is no alternative than for people who insist that they must have restructuring or nothing to consider the nothing. And the nothing will be determined collectively by everybody.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.